Hi everyone, I'm Jillian Rader and welcome to Lincoln Park Zoo's podcast. Today I'm here with
Siga Lapinskas. I'm the Nutrition Center Manager here at Lincoln Park Zoo.
All right, so in the simplest terms, what does that mean?
So it means that I'm responsible for all the diets, all the food that goes out to all the animals. So that means the science of it, like kind of figuring out what they need, and then also the logistics. So I got a team who helps me, and they kind of pack up the food, they buy the food, they organize it, inspect it, kind of a deal, and then we send it out to all the areas. So it's kind of like a two-prong of the science and then the logistics of getting everyone fed here at the zoo.
Cool. And then on a more complicated level,
yes.
What is nutrition science?
Yeah, so nutrition science is the study of nutrition. So nutrition, I like to think of it as like building blocks. So like think of Legos, right? So your body needs Legos in order to be able to function, and the way that you get those Legos is through the foods that you eat. And those foods are made up of like different Lego pieces, like different sizes, different colors, the whole 9 yards. And so those Lego pieces are what like the nutrients are. And so nutrition is basically just the study of like how many and what kind of Lego blocks does your body need in order to be healthy. And that changes over time. So it changes if you're growing, it changes if you're older, it changes if you're pregnant or you're sick or something like that. So that's like the science behind it. And every species is really different, just because of like how they've evolved and what they eat. So nutrition isn't the same for all the animals. So that's really cool. We think of it as like a comparative nutrition. So we're like comparing between different animals what they need to eat.
All right. Can you talk about just like very simply what your day looks like, or how you deploy all of this food to 750 animals?
Yeah. So from the like logistics side of getting the food, so we usually work like a day or 2 days ahead. Just because in the mornings, the first thing we do is we deliver all the food to all the different areas. So we got a great van, great crew that it's a lot of loading. So it's a lot of heavy boxes that we put into a van, we drive it around zoo grounds, and then we kind of drop it off. And then after that, it's just filling the orders. So we've got people working with produce. So they're working in a cooler, they're just packing like cucumbers and lettuce and fruit and things like that. And then we have people working in our freezer, so they're dealing with like the meat and the whole prey, so like for carnivores, right, like what they would be eating. For me, my day is never the same. Sometimes I'm helping my crew out, my team out. Other days, I'm doing a lot of like computer work. So the nutrition science part of it, right, so it's trying to figure out like analyzing diets, really. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of math, but then it's also a lot of like double checking my work, because these animals can't communicate to us like, oh, I'm hungry, or oh, I'm not feeling well, or oh, I need this or that. So it's a lot of like investigation, almost like a little bit of a mystery.
A little detective work.
Yeah, a lot of detective work. So every day is very, very different, but I think that's one of the things that I love so much about it is that it's a pro and a con, right? You can get into the day and you're like, all right, I got to get all this stuff done, and then you get one phone call and you're like, oh, I got to pivot to everything else like that.
How rare is it to have a full-time nutritionist on staff at a zoo?
Yeah, it's pretty rare. So out of the like roughly 240 AZA accredited institutions, only about 20 have a nutritionist or a dedicated like nutritionist. So that's less than 10%, which is really small. We are a very tight-knit community though, like we all kind of know each other and we help each other out a lot and stuff like that. So it's a great community to be a part of. But if institutions don't have like a dedicated nutritionist like we have here, usually it'll be like the veterinarian that does it, or like curators or somebody else like that. But very rarely is it like one professional to oversee the entire program for like all the animals. So pretty special.
It's nice to have a little like community hive mind too.
Yes, yeah.
And in our conversations, which I have found fascinating, not only are we buying and purchasing different, raw produce and also perhaps some pre-made things, but you are all making some interesting things. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I think one of the coolest success stories we have of like our own sort of recipe is we make our own homemade jams. So a lot of the jams that you buy commercially, they either have a lot of sugar in them or they'll have like sugar like substitutes, so like aspartame or something else like that really isn't the greatest for these animals. But jam is a really helpful tool to use like to get medication in or for training, because a lot of medication is like very bitter, so you kind of want to counter that with something so that these animals will take it. So we were really struggling with finding a jam that we were like comfortable with, and so we actually decided just to make our own jam. So it's pretty cool, and we also make like different mixes, because for a lot of our species, you can't just like go to the store and buy food for them. Like you have to be creative and you have to kind of like make it yourself, kind of a deal. So a lot of those recipes, like my predecessors or I'm in charge of like making, and then the team does a really good job of like making them and distributing them. So
cool.
Yeah.
We've talked about all the different things, but nutrition is the building blocks, but it's also not just what you're eating, but how you're eating it.
Yeah.
So can you tell me more about like why some things might be whole, why things might be cut up, like how are you presenting the food and why does that matter?
Yeah, the presentation is super important. You have to think of the animal like how they eat it in the wild, how they get their food, and you want to try and like mimic that as best that you can. So a great example would be like our African painted dogs. So they're carnivores, but in the wild they're like pack hunters, right? So they work together, like that's a huge part of who they are. And so we need to be able to mimic that as much as we can. So we actually end up feeding whole carcasses to them. And so the point of that is so that they work together to kind of like tear it up and everything, but it's really important for their muscles as well. So when they're tearing at it, they're using these muscles and they're developing it, and in addition to like the social stuff that they're kind of doing. So that's really important for them, because they also have like the teeth to be able to tear everything up into smaller pieces.
Yeah.
Versus if you had like a much smaller animal that wasn't as strong, like they couldn't tear up that goat carcass. So it's important to make sure that you're trying to fit what they're physically capable of doing with what they need to be doing. And that's a big part too of having these animals like in the zoo setting, is we want to give them opportunities to like do what they would naturally want to be doing.
Yeah, those species specific behaviors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because in the wild, these animals are spending probably like 85 to 90% of their time like around food, either hunting for it, foraging it, like processing it,
Trying
right?
not to be it.
Yeah, exactly. Trying not to be it, the whole 9 yards, right? So like their entire life, like pretty much revolves around food and then procreation, right? And then if you just get food handed to you though, like in a bowl, that's like 10 minutes and then you're done. What are you supposed to do with the rest of your kind of day, especially when you're kind of geared to be doing something around food? So we'll be creative with how we present it. There's like enrichment feeders and stuff like that. So kind of like these puzzle feeders, like contraptions that make it harder for animals to get the food out of.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll have to get Allison on here to talk
Yes.
all about that someday.
Yes, she's the pro with all of that stuff.
Okay, can you also share, I think people think perhaps animals should eat every day regardless of the species, and maybe folks might know about like snakes as an exception or something, but I've recently learned about the different gorge feedings and things like that. So can you also talk about frequency of food and how that plays into the individual diets you make? Yeah,
the frequency is really important. Again, everything that we do is very species like dependent. Mm-hmm. A great example of this is the polar bears. So the polar bear gorge feeding. Again, everything we're trying to do is trying to like understand what's happening to them in the wild, and understanding is that beneficial to try and mimic. So for the polar bears, it's important because of their physiology, right? So there's like chemical triggers that are happening in them that's telling them like what season it is and like what they're supposed to kind of be gearing up for to do next. Yeah. And so part of that is like in the wild, they'll hunt seals. Right? So hunting a seal is not easy, right? So they might have to go a couple days not being successful depending on how good they are. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, right, they get that kill and they're able to just pig out, like feast out, seriously. And so we're trying to mimic that type of like physiology with them being able to eat a lot of food all at once and then kind of not really eating later. I also try to, like the philosophy is that you just got to balance it out throughout a week. Sure. Right? So throughout a week, if I'm happy.
I've heard that about kids too.
Exactly. Right? Like if one day it's pizza.
It's fine.
No worries. Like pizza and whatever, as long as they eat some vegetables throughout the week. It's kind of similar with the animals, is we don't, again, it's very species dependent, but for generally speaking though, it's good to just like per week, if they get what they need to, it's okay if one day we're off a little bit.
So in my time here at the zoo, I've seen a ton of different animals. Some are picky eaters, some are ravenous, pregnancies, which you've mentioned too. And even more complicated challenges like Siku, the polar bear, having allergies and working some allergens into his diet proactively. So that's a challenge that I know about, but I'm sure you have plenty of your own. Is there a challenge or a situation that rises to the top of success stories for you?
Yeah, I think like generally speaking, and I touched on it a little bit, the challenge is that it's all the species, right? So you have to be able to pivot very, very quickly. Feeding a snake who only eats like twice a week is really different from, like the polar bears, right? Who they just need a lot more like care and dedication to kind of their diet and what they're eating and everything like that. But a challenge for me here at the zoo, and like a success story with that, was our black bears actually. So Katai and Birch, they're super adorable, super cute. They love like these spare big tires that they just kind of like hang out in and everything like that.
Seen all the
It's just
photos and videos.
When I need to smile,
I think one of them
over
even
it.
has a sign that says like, "This is okay."
Yeah, I'm not stuck, I promise. But so black bear, like normal physiology, right, is like they go through torpor. So torpor is just like a lighter hibernation. So think of it like a snooze or a nap versus like a deep sleep. But like November-ish through March is typically when they kind of go down and like hunker down. So we haven't really had a lot of success with them like doing that. And so we decided to kind of come at it from a diet perspective, because a lot of that, what I was talking about earlier, a lot of those like chemical sort of triggers in the body are really nutrition related.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing is kind of like these phase diets where like we're trying to mimic like the amount of food and what type of food they have out in the wild. But the big part of the torpor is that they're sleeping and their metabolism is lower and everything else like that. And actually for the first time this past year, both of them fell asleep and stayed asleep. Like
Yay.
Usually one of them kind of like wakes up all the
Sure.
time and everything like that, but this was the first year where they stayed asleep.
That's awesome.
We were so happy. And so we kind of did like this trigger where we did like a gorge fest right beforehand.
Okay.
So it's like for a week, we just threw food at them. Just eat, right? And like a food coma, right?
Yeah,
And then just
exactly.
go to bed. Exactly. Like when you're shoving your face full of pizza or ice cream or something
Thanksgiving,
like that.
yeah.
Exactly. So that's what we were trying to do for them. And we called it October because
Okay.
we did it in October.
Sure.
So it was really cute. Like we had stickers made and everything. It was fun. But that was a really huge success story because that's really, really healthy for them, because yes, we want them to gain the weight, but what's almost more important is we want them to lose the weight again. So what they had been doing for years is like, they'd gain and then they go to bed, they'd gain and go to bed, right? And so they just kept creeping like that. And it's like, that's too much, right? We got to get them back down. So.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
so interesting.
But yeah.
Okay, so I feel like Birch and Katai, there's only 2 of them. So that might make feeding a little bit easier, especially if one likes vegetables and one doesn't.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
assume that, the one is eating all the vegetables. That feels straightforward enough. But how does that work for like the flock of flamingos, where you've got like freshly hatched chicks and geriatric adults and then dozen plus of them?
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's different and it's a
Okay.
lot harder. So the bears were like individual, right?
Yeah.
We could treat them as like, this is Birch, this is Katai. You're saying for the flock, your mentality is different. You're like, it's a herd mentality or flock mentality. So you're feeding all of them. So you're gonna have some, because especially with those types of species, they have hierarchies, right? So there's gonna be
Yeah.
flamingos in there that are like, I'm the top dog, like I'm gonna eat everything I want to because I can.
Yeah.
And then there's gonna be other ones that are like, I'm gonna wait till everyone else eats because I don't wanna like rock the boat, and then I'll go and eat. So for feedings like that, you really wanna make sure you don't have too many extremes. Meaning you don't wanna have individuals that are like really, really over-conditioned or
Yeah.
like that are eating way too much. And then you don't wanna have individuals that are like not eating enough. So you will have some thinner ones, you'll have some like heavier ones, but you kinda wanna try and like strike that.
Like aim for the middle.
Yeah, aim for the middle kind of a deal and strike that balance. Those are really challenging, like having herd or flocks or like mixed species. Birds, we do that a lot where they'll have different, and with the mixed species, you'll have birds that like eat differently or like that have a different natural history with like what types of foods they eat. But like you can't tell them that they should only eat what's like formulated for them to eat. So that's where like the mystery comes in, and that's where like the kind of, you got to get creative with how to either like keep certain animals out of it. So like going back to our flamingos, right? They eat outside. but like wildlife can get to it. So
Sure.
like the seagulls or
Yeah.
ducks. So the
They find a way.
They find a way, right? Like when there's food involved, everyone is very, very motivated.
Yeah.
But they built these like exclusion feeders. So there's like garbage cans with like these PVC kind of things in it. Because right,
Yeah.
the flamingos have super long necks.
Yeah, so they can
so
get in.
they can like bend in and like get it, and then theoretically the other birds don't get in there. But I've seen these seagulls, and they like Chicago seagulls are very, very.
They're
like,
a different type. Yeah.
They're completely.
They're
different.
Chicagoan.
Exactly, right? They're stubborn. So they do still get in there. But a lot of that is you have to account for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we end up like the waterfall pond, like the Chicago wildlife is the best fed wildlife in like the world because they get the food that like
The highest quality.
Yeah, the highest
Yeah.
quality, everything like that. Yeah, yeah.
We talked about getting food from other sources and making our own purees and jams.
Yeah, yeah.
But we also grow some of our own food.
Yeah.
So can you share, I've seen some of the browse gardens, and shout out to our horticulture team. We now have bananas
Yes.
and coconuts, which is incredible.
Yeah.
But what are some other ways that Nutrition Center is working to be like more sustainable and reducing waste, all of that?
Yeah, no, so you touched on some great ones. Like a great way is to kind of grow our own, but another way, if we can't do it right, we're a small zoo. We don't have a lot of land. These other institutions have like
We
these,
got a lake in the way.
we got a lake in the way. Like maybe aquaculture will be coming soon for us.
That'd be cool.
We'll see. But it's to then stay local, right? So like if we can't do the growing, like try and find people as close to us as we can that have been doing some of that. So we're really trying to partner with like local farmers and everything like that to make sure that we're buying what they've got in season. For fish, that's a huge one, and this is something that
Yeah.
we've been doing, the industry's been doing for a couple of decades at this point, but there's different like organizations. The one we use is called Seafood Watch, and it was started like Monterey Bay Aquarium and everything. So basically what they do is they rate like the sustainability of like the fish. So
Okay.
they take into account like the population of the fish that they're fishing and also the way that it was caught. And the way that it's caught is important because they want to make sure that you're like avoiding bycatch. So basically like if you're fishing for capelin, let's say, right, you don't want to be catching all this other fish
Right.
because either they're endangered or like then you're not doing anything with them, like they kind of just die and it's really sad. So that's a huge part of that organization, and so in the fishing industry is really like taking that seriously. And so our producer, or like our supplier, they're like a middle person. They deal with like the fisheries and stuff
Okay.
like that, but they know that like we need to have. There's like 2 categories that we will accept. So it's like a better choice option and like the best choice option.
Okay.
So that's also to make sure that we are not decimating the wild populations of fish, because if we're like decimating that to feed the animals in captivity, then we're kind of like working against ourselves, because then the animals in the wild don't
Right.
get it, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like just working against ourselves kind of a deal. So that's a really important thing, to make sure that we're doing sustainable like seafood
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
And Seafood Watch too is publicly available.
Yes.
So you can
Yeah.
eat sustainably harvested seafood as well. So check out Seafood Watch.
Yeah, they got a great little app and like
Yeah.
and everything like
And you
that.
can also like ask at restaurants.
Yeah.
They're used to hearing and knowing where their food source is from. So
Yeah.
something we can all do in our lives as well. What is, so we talked about how rare nutritionists on
Yeah.
staff are, and also just the complications of individual diets. What do you think is the future of nutrition science? Like, we've come so far, what's next? What's on the horizon?
What's on the horizon?
Yeah.
I think the microbiome stuff
Okay.
is really, really important and really, really fascinating. They've done quite a bit of work trying to like understand microbiomes of like exotic species and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
hard though, because we can only work with like an individual here, right? Like it's not like we can have like 500 sloths and then we just do a big study with them,
Sure.
right? Like that's not really how it goes. But I've got colleagues that have done, it's called like a fecal transplant.
Okay.
So what they'll do is they'll take feces from like a healthy individual and then kind of like sterilize it a little bit, kind of clean it up, they process it a little bit, and then they give it to a sick individual, and that's to get the microbes in there, right? So that means
Interesting.
something's off with their microbiome,
Yeah.
right? So like the bacteria that's living in there is just not doing well with that individual. So a lot of that you'll see like chronic diarrhea or like other kind of things like that. So
which impacts their weight and
impacts
their general
everything.
health,
Some individuals will waste away.
Yeah.
Right. As a result of that.
Yeah.
You know, just imagine if you got chronic diarrhea, like you never
no
feel
one wants that.
No one wants that, right? You don't feel good.
Yeah.
Nothing about your life is great, kind of a deal. So these animals sometimes will go through the same thing. It's hard because we don't always know why. Like we don't always know what the trigger is, and we don't always know what the solution is.
Yeah.
Right. So like if they are having it, it's not like, oh, we'll just order these microbes and just kind of like, you know, give them a cocktail.
Yeah.
We don't really know, but I think that's definitely going to be the future of like utilizing that tool. I don't know if we'll ever know, but, you know, but it's just one more tool in the tool belt that will be super important for like these animals that just are sick and we're just not quite sure why.
Sure.
Kind of a deal. Yes, it's
so
exciting. Poop is the future.
Poop is the future.
Poop is the past, present, and future.
I was just going to say.
Poop is everything.
And I mean, not to go on a poop tangent, but you can also learn so much from species.
So much.
Stress levels.
Stress level,
biomes.
reproduction, microbiome, like nutrient. I mean, again, nerding out here. Digestibility studies, right? So again, going back to that Lego block like analogy or whatever, so the way we know if an individual is like actually absorbing the nutrients, right? So they actually like take what's in the food, they bring it into their body and they can utilize it, is measuring what you put in and then measuring what they poop out, right? And then the difference is like what they've absorbed, right? It's like a simple math equation kind of a deal. So as nutritionists are being trained and like at universities and stuff, it's a lot of poop. It's a lot of measuring what you're giving them, and it's a lot of collecting poop, and it's a lot of collecting urine, and it's kind of measuring the differences, and then you extrapolate from that.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, you went to school for poop.
I went to school and poop was a really, really big part of my school.
Foundational part of your life.
I got to know poop real well. Yeah, but I was smart in that I worked with horse poop and then cow poop. I didn't work with carnivore poop. That stuff is smelly. The worst is anything that like eats primarily fish.
Yeah.
Their poop, no thank you.
I've heard from one of our previous endocrinologists that fishing cats were like the absolute
worst
of all time.
That makes sense. Yeah, well, no thank you.
Speaking of horses and cows and domestic species, how do you think your education or your career in nutrition has impacted either like you in your personal life or like maybe pets? Like how do you see nutrition kind of zoomed out for all species?
Yeah, well, before I went to school, I didn't really have like any kind of understanding or like interest or whatever in nutrition. Like I didn't realize it was a thing, right? And then I was at school in undergrad working with horses, and then my one like professor was like my mentor. She happened to be like the nutritionist there and stuff, so I just happened to be doing poop stuff and things like that. But it really gave me like a foundational understanding of like how important nutrition is. Don't get me wrong, I 100% still eat pizza, 100% still eat the donuts, right? Kind of a deal. Like even knowing that stuff is like not great.
Sure.
What it shows is like it's a moderation kind of a deal.
You said it just matters what you eat in a week.
Yeah, exactly.
So
over a week. Little nuances. Yeah, but sure, we'll go with that over a week. But no, I think it just kind of helped me, especially with like the microbiome stuff, just understand that one size doesn't fit all. You know, like I know this science and I know like the basic understanding, we all have that.
Yeah.
But then a lot of stuff for individuals, like for humans or even for pets, right? Like food allergy is a huge one of those kinds of a deal, right? Like it's
We're seeing just more and more of that, I feel like too.
Exactly, and that's like a cross of other disciplines too, right?
Yeah.
So like as a nutritionist, I don't know too much about that, but we kind of focus on like, okay, how do we like prevent it from happening, or what else can we feed when they can't have this one thing, kind of a deal. So it really kind of gave me like a better understanding, and I think like and a perspective of just like not one size fits all, especially when you're doing like zoo nutrition, like comparative nutrition. One size doesn't fit, even between like institutions, right? Like Brookfield just down the road, they'll have a completely different diet than I will for the same species, and it's like, but it works.
Yeah.
You know?
Just like different
people.
people.
Yeah, just different things that they're able to get, or different individual, or different needs of that animal as well, kind of a deal. So
cool.
Yeah.
This has been great. Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
have learned so much, and also from our time working together, I also have learned so much about you. And I think your job is cool, but also you do so much cool stuff in your life.
I try.
Just so everyone knows, sailing,
Yeah.
cycling,
Yeah.
Girl Scout troop leader,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
And you love the opera.
I love the opera.
So tell me just like, what does Siga do
What
when
does
she's not planning the diets of
Well, I think-
700 animals?
I think this past weekend was a perfect example of that. So it was a work weekend for our scout organization. So we're Sea Scouts, so that means we sail all the time.
Cool. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yes, we're Lithuanian Sea Scouts, and we are the Untitled Chapter, the best. I'm not biased or anything. But so this weekend, for like 10 years, we've been planning to build this boathouse to store all of our sailboats by the lake that we go camping.
Yeah.
And finally it's come to fruition. Like a lot of people have put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. And my brother actually was like the project manager for it. And it was like finished this past week. And so we went up and we did a whole bunch of projects. We like laid flooring down, and like we covered these like racks for the sailboats so that the boats wouldn't get like scratched when we're moving them and everything like that. So we worked all weekend doing manual labor, like really hard manual labor.
You're like, I like to just do it all week.
Yeah,
100% of the time, I like to be working myself to the bone.
Working myself to the bone, pretty good. But we camped, right? So like we were out in nature and it was fun. It was like a good group. And then the opera, I always like, that's my car jam, is opera.
Sure.
Like, I love it. That's me and my mom.
That's the
thing.
place where you can belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I can't sing to sing. And it's like in Italian
matter.
too. And I
When
don't
you're in
know
the car, it doesn't matter.
It's just noises that are just coming out. But yeah, no, the opera is like, that's how I sort of regroup. And it's funny, so I'll listen to it in my office. And my team is kind of like outside of my office and stuff. And they call it my ghost music. Because it's like the Sopranos, right? They sing pretty high and they can't really hear what's going on, and they just think ghosts are like screaming in my office.
Yeah. And then the Nutrition Center has a nice like hum too from
It
all
does,
the fridges.
from all the fridges. Yeah. So it's kind of like
It's a little
eerie.
haunting.
It's a little eerie, but I've embraced my ghost music.
I love it.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you, Siga, so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Of course. And for anyone else who wants to check out our podcast, be sure to follow Lincoln Park Zoo on YouTube, our social media channels at Lincoln Park Zoo, and we'll see you next time.